Great to see so many of you here this afternoon. I know you're in for a treat. It's a privilege really to welcome Neil from the Chief Executive Officer from Oynx Group. Neil's been with the Oynx Group since its inception as an internet startup. He's been with it through some turbulent times. He's going to talk to you today about setting up, building and running a successful business and how to overcome those obstacles that the environment throws in your way. And it's a real opportunity, a real privilege for you to be here today, and I'm really grateful for Neil coming along today to share his experiences with us. So I'll leave you with Neil now. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks, Neil.
Anyone kidding when he said it was going to be a short introduction? Well, thank you very much for everybody coming. This is a fantastic turnout. I'm really pleased. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. Is my mic working okay?
Spot on.
Then we're on. What I'd like to do today, my ambition today is to give everybody who's probably got some really good theoretical background as to how to build a business and read a lot of books and seen a lot of films, just want to really give you a very practical, a very hands-on, a very current view about how we've built our business, tell you some of the experiences we've been through as a business, try and let you take away some learnings from all of that. So rather than just give you the theory about we've got a brilliant business, thought I'd tell you some of the steps, some of the challenges, some of the things that have kept me awake at night, and the great highs and great lows. Something about me, first of all, because I think the world is about people, and you need to know a little bit about me. I actually graduated from Sunderland University, and I'd love to say it was a choice, and I really want to go to Sunderland, and I love Sunderland, and I have come to love the university, and as the years have gone by, but I actually came here because I just didn't get the grades to go anywhere else. People mature at different stages of life. And when I was 18 years old, there was girls, there was beer, there was cricket, and academia was a little bit further down the pecking order for me. But I did come here, and it was Sunderland University when I first came here, but actually it was Sunderland Polytechnic, and all it really did was change the signs on the building, and it went from Polytechnic to university overnight. 3 fantastic years later, I graduated from the university, doing a degree in IT and with a little bit of economics in it. And looking back, and I was talking to the guys walking across the day, and they said, yeah, that must have been a really good grounding for you with what you've done since then to have had a degree in IT. And I thought, well, not really, because there wasn't an internet at the time. Most of the stuff I had was on a green screen. Most of it was computer programming that we don't do anymore. So the theory was good, but the practical stuff wasn't that helpful when I look back. And if you look at the rate of change and the way things have gone, and the iPhones and the like that have come along, even in the last few years, if you go back 20 years plus, then you see that rate of change. I took a job at a local brewery, first job out of university, a sales and marketing job, which I loved, and I did 3 of the greatest years you can ever imagine. I was a young, single guy, I lived locally, I live in South Shields, a few miles away. The business I worked in was involved in sport and drinking beer and eating food. They're the 3 greatest things in my life, so for 3 fantastic years, we did TV advertising, I had a multi-million-pound marketing budget. I had the greatest fun. But then I woke up one day and thought, you know what? There's a lot of people working in this brewery here that have been here 20, 30 years, and they're still low down the pecking order, and I wanted a lot more than that. And I love the business and I love the people. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to wake up in 20 years' time and be sitting on the same desk, getting paid the same amount, doing the same stuff. I need to go and do something different. I don't want to fall out of love with this business. And I'm in serious danger of having a job here. I never want a job. I don't have a job now. I would advise that nobody gets a job. They get something that they really love doing and go to work every day because they want to, not because they have to. So I left. And I took a job, I took a pay cut, and I took a role in an internet startup business called Oynx in 1996. It was 2 years old and tiny. It was about that big. But I loved it. It was the greatest fun you could ever imagine, because I was doing exactly what I wanted to do. We had no money, it was the greatest fun you could ever imagine. And I've been there ever since. I'll probably tell you the story as we go further forward of how we built that business from nothing, from the smallest business you can ever imagine. 3 management buyouts later, Originally as sales and marketing director, but the last 7 years as chief exec. We've grown that business from nothing to a fantastic business. And I thought I'd take the opportunity today just to tell you how we've done that and try and relate some of that back to your academic studies and maybe your practical things as you move out. If people start businesses or join entrepreneurial businesses, I'd like to think you've got some real examples out of that. So if that's okay, and I'll take questions at the very end. I like questions, the more direct the better, as long as I can be direct back, that works for me. In terms of the business, what do we do first of all? And this is not really so much about the business, it's about how we build the business. The business today manages very complex IT environments. So if I was to give you a real life example of that, we run the IT for Edinburgh Airport. If the IT doesn't work, you don't check in, you don't get your bag scanned, you don't get your ticket, the plane doesn't fly, traffic control doesn't work, the boards don't work. We do the whole 9 yards for that airport. You can't get any more mission critical. There's not a tolerance there. It either works or it doesn't. And if something goes wrong, people die. So that is the level of criticality. Typically, the customers that we deliver service to have an immediate pain point. Banks. So we deal with most of the banks in the UK. You can't get your money out. That's an immediate pain point. If something goes down and the cash point machines don't work, that's an immediate pain point. So that's the level of service that we provide to our customers. If you've travelled on the metro, I run all the IT for the metro. So basically, you can't fly without me, you can't get on the metro without me, you can't use the banks without me. I'm pretty important to everyone in this room, I think. And our business is to get those relationships in 3 to 5 year terms. Because I don't like doing things in short term, I like to do things in the long term. And having that sticky, recurring, contracted business is what floats my boat and makes me excited. And I'll tell you how we've built this, but it's basically we've built a business now that stretches right across the UK. From Glasgow, top left-hand corner, to Edinburgh, down to the northeast to a couple of sites in Newcastle, head office in Teesside. That's probably not quite where the Sheffield site is, but that's where it is, and all the way down to London. So from one site in Teesside in 1996 to that today, it's been quite a challenge, quite an interesting journey. So that's the business that we've built out, and that's what drives our revenues and profitability as we go forward. I'll probably skip over that and go. In terms of customers, I talked a little bit about the customers. My top 200 customers, the top 200 businesses that we deal with, people like these guys, you'll know them all. They're all household names. They're all businesses with a track record, with a credibility, with a longevity, with a history. I don't deal with little Mickey Mouse businesses. I deal with the very best businesses. And you'll probably look and say, you know what? This is probably as good a one as anyone. Glasses Guide. Glasses Guide are the people who tell you what your second-hand car isn't worth anymore. So when you go to get your car done, that's an international business. That's all about information. If they are not able to service that information at the garages, you can't go and get your car done. So this is an information and a quality business driven from high-quality customers. So when I talk to people about our business, there's a bit of quality there because there's some real good customers. You don't, when you're building a business, you don't accidentally get a customer base like that. You don't provide rubbish service and get a customer base like that. You don't have a poor business. That for me is the fundamental. And my view is we serve at the behest of those customers. That is the fundamental thing there. So it's all about building a very customer-centric, very front-facing business. Over the years, we've used the press quite well to promote what we do, and I'm going to do that right now by showing you some of the things we've done. The press and the media are really good at effectively pushing forward there we go. So the press are really good at effectively driving the credibility of your business because people believe what's in the press. So we've used the press really well over the years to effectively, if you go back one, to effectively use that customer base and the media to promote what we do and give ourselves credibility. And that's given us a business that's really well known. without having to spend millions on marketing. I told you at the beginning, when I worked at the brewery, we did TV advertising. We had a multi-million pound marketing budget. I've never had a multi-million pound marketing budget at Oynx, never ever. So you have to do other things. So I will use my customers and the press to drive the visibility of our business, and we've done that all the way across the history of our business. I think that's really important. The power of the press and the reach and the value you can get out of that are just key. People misunderstand that. And the press are looking for stories all the time. You think the press only publish the best stories, they'll print anything, and especially at Christmas when there's no news. So you've got to understand the power of the press. If I was to take you onto our business right now and just let you know a little bit about us, the business is 20 years old. It feels like it's only been 5 minutes, but it's actually 20 years. We turned over 20 million last year. Size and scale, that's quite impressive. It was less than £1 million when we did the first management buyout in 2000. So there's been a real steady growth in the size of this business. It makes 25% profit, 20-25% profit. And for me, revenues are great. The famous saying, revenues are vanity, profit is sanity. You cannot pay any bills with revenue. The banks think revenue is interesting, but profit's what drives everybody. So that profitability is really important. And the ratio between revenue and profitability is a key measure for any funder. Anybody who's looking at your business and trying to understand how valuable that is, it's all about revenue, number of customers, but how much profit you make, how you drive that out, because the more profit you make, the more you can invest, that gives you extra cash. The business is got a head office in Teesside. It's got 120 staff, and I've showed you all the locations that we've got. So it's moved, this journey's been all about one location to 9 different ones. This has been about a small business to a big business getting bigger. It's now got 5 data centres, it's got 7 recovery centres. This is a business that was nothing, and has now got size and scale and robustness. It's got a reputation and a customer base to die for. Let me take you right back to the beginning, because I think telling you where we've got to now, you probably think, wow, that's quite impressive. Let me just tell you a little bit about how we did that. When I joined the business, 1996, there was 6 internet providers in the UK. When I joined, I'd never used the internet. I spent most of the first few years telling everybody that email was great. Email would definitely replace the fax machine at some point. I thought it was fantastic. I knew nobody who had email. I'd never used it at university. There was no internet at university in those days. And there was only about 6 internet providers in the whole of the UK, of which we were one. And I thought, wow, this is good. Let's just split the country into 6. We'll have our own little bits, and that'll be fantastic. This is going to be great. What I didn't realise was 2 weeks later there was 206, and another 2 weeks later there was 406. So this market suddenly went from 6, and a kind of self-contained little market, to a massive market with tons and tons of competition. And whenever I talk to people about competition, and they say, oh yeah, what's your experience there? Well, those early days of offering internet access services, wow, they were super challenging. The world changed every single day. Every one of my competitors had deeper pockets than me, they had more money than me, they normally had media outlets that they could promote and distribute things. A lot of them were in London where there was more chimney pots and more businesses. God, that was super tough. And then this business in Leeds came along and said, never mind any of that, we're going to give it away free. And we may as well almost at that point have closed the doors and thought, how are we going to compete against a business that's giving my product away free? Because that's the ultimate disruptive market influence in your business, somebody coming into your market and providing a service, an exactly comparable type of service with absolutely no charge. And I was charging £10 a month, all the way up to thousands for a business. Super competition. And what I probably recognised in the early days was price is a driver for a lot of things, but the sweetness of a really cheap deal disappears rapidly when the service is crap. And the service for free service, crap. Pardon my French. It was rubbish. And the customers left one month and came back the next and never ever went. And free serve grew so quickly, they couldn't keep up with customer service, so the service was horrendous. So while this market was going and exploding rapidly, we were carving our own little niche out of there. I was still charging £10, they were free. But I didn't like the price-driven nature of this market. And the fundamentals of a market are really important. And I looked at this market and I thought, you know what, I can tell the future. I always say to my finance director, you accurately record history and I'll tell you what the future is going to be. And the future I could see was that that price I could charge a customer was going to get less and less and less. And it was just going to get hard. So I either grew a business that was really narrow and really tall, or I broadened what we did and did some other stuff. So that was the challenge we faced in those early days. Then we were sold to a US telecoms company, which was good news for a few months, and then that business went bust. So Christmas 2000, we did a management buyout of the business at that point. Hardest thing I've ever done. Christmas 2000, the dot-com crash. Everybody just laughed when you said I worked for a dot-com business. Rolled around the floor. Nobody wanted to invest in a dot-com business. Nobody had any cash. No bank would lend you any money to buy a business out of administration. All the people who had any money had lost loads of money on the stock market, so the world was rubbish. Everybody was eating turkey, and I was trying to buy a turkey over Christmas. I just met a lady who I then married, and the first thing I said to her was, I quite like you, however, I need to buy this business. This is everything to me. You have to give me a month to get this deal done. And a month later, on my birthday, we completed the acquisition of the assets of that business. I put into it every single penny that I had. So did everybody else who was involved in that deal at the time. And I said to my now wife, look, give me a month and you can go anywhere you want to go. I really don't care, just give me a month, I need to get this done. And she said, oh, I'd quite like to go to New York. I thought, oh hell, that wasn't really what I had in mind. I thought York or something like that, but she thought New York was good. So that's where I went. So anyway, we bought the assets of this business over Christmas, just with a bit of determination. Looking back, geez, we had some interesting views of the world at that point, because it was a big risk. The next 2 years, we just spent kind of solidifying that business. It had gone through a bit of a challenging time. The market was challenging. The competitive landscape was challenging. The market perception of these type of businesses was tough. And I always had this worry in the back of my mind that over time it would be hard to build a sustainable business just based on internet access. I just thought it would be tough. And I do always say to my FD, you record history and I'll tell you what it's going to be like. And I looked forward at that point and thought, you know what, if this is going to be a short play, unless we start and add some new things to what we do, we need to evolve this business. We need to find a new platform using what we've already got, and then we need to scale this business. And that's what we did. And I have to say, we tried loads of things. Actually, my greatest advice to people is, you should just try stuff. You really should. It's not going to kill. As long as it doesn't kill you, you're okay. And normally your greatest regret is the things you don't do. The biggest frustration for me right now is solar panels. And everyone says, why solar panels? I was too lazy to put solar panels on my house when the deal was the greatest deal in the world. And the world changed and it's a rubbish deal now. And every time I drive past a house with solar panels, I look up and think, greatest regret is that I didn't do that, not the things that I have done. So we just tried loads of things. We eventually got a winning proposition and we scaled it from there. That was our view. But we did try a lot of things, we really did. There was tons of bets we had on certain things and some of them just didn't work. So how did we grow that business? How did we do the bit that moved us from an internet service provider to the business we have right now? Well, I picked something that was adjacent, in adjacent space to what we were. And in 2003 it was data centre. The data centre market in the UK was all based on London, there was nothing anywhere else. And I thought, internet access, hosting, people are going to want to host things, they're going to want to access them. I could just see the market here. The margins look better, the stickiness of that business looked better. I just liked that area of business. What I didn't like about it was you have to spend more than £1 million to get into it. And it didn't have £1 million. That was just the way it was. We bought a data centre, a property in Newcastle, our first data centre. We spent £1 million, we borrowed 900 and put 100 in between us. And we always had a backup plan, and if that didn't work, we'd knock it down and build flats. So that always felt like a good bet. It was a property-backed bet. But it didn't have any customers, it didn't have any staff. I bought an asset, and I had no idea how to operate this business. I knew roughly what it looked like, but I didn't understand the nuances of power and how these things worked. And all I did was just spend every waking moment in that data centre, selling it, operating it, building a team around us, making millions of mistakes. The first few deals we did, looking back, were just comical. We were too cheap a price, too big a specification. But over time, we built this business to the stage where we thought we understood data centre. We understood how to scale this business. We knew the margins were about 80%. We thought the value of this was huge compared to the internet access business we had. We loved it. We thought, wow, we've done so well here. And it was also asset backed. Most technology companies have got virtually no asset. It's the code, it's the customers. I had a business with physical assets, a property, which was, until recently, going to appreciate in value every year. I could touch and feel it. It was a real good way to grow our business, to get into that data center space. But looking back, people say, God, you were lucky there, and you were in right place, right time. I definitely wasn't lucky, because I had no customers, I had no idea what to do. We made millions of mistakes, and I probably worked 70-hour weeks for the first 18 months. Every time I thought we were going to make money, it just took a bit longer. It definitely took twice as long to get to break even than I ever thought. And I couldn't even get a bank to lend us the money, because I didn't understand what data centers were all about. Didn't understand the model, didn't understand how we made money. And eventually, I went down to the bank on the quayside in Newcastle, and I got the guy and said, look, I'm not going to tell you anything about the business. And I walked him up the quayside to the property, and I said, I want to buy that. He said, oh, it's a property, we do that, yeah, no problems. So off we went. So that was all about getting into a new area of business. That was a strategic move from internet access to data center. That was a change in our model, full stop. And that was really one of the catalysts for moving forward. We did a similar thing with another adjacent business continuity, kind of recovery. We thought the world would get heavily reliant on technology, and we thought a lot of businesses would find that they would need to relocate in the event they had a disaster. And we started building these properties out. Again, we spent £1 million to build that out. Again, it took me 18 months to do that. I had no customers, I had no staff. We needed to find a salesperson, great story. We needed to find a salesperson for a new business with no customers, with no track record, nobody operating in our space, in the geography. And I was sitting with one of my directors at the time, and his phone rang. He picked the phone up and was talking to somebody on the phone, and he made some excuses and put it down. I said, what's the matter? He said, well, there's this girl who works for the Chamber of Commerce, and she's selling software, and it's rubbish, but she won't leave me alone, and I think I'm going to buy it. And I thought, so why don't we just buy her? So we rang her up and said, come and have breakfast and try and sell us this stuff, and she did. And when she got there, we said, we're not interested in this software thing. We'd quite like you to work for us in the recovery centre. She's one of my sales managers now. Fantastic acquisition 6 years ago. So the people bit was really important, getting her on board. What was different about that investment in our business was we suddenly added a bit of business where the capital expense of maintaining this business and getting into it was high. So every step change I needed to make in the business was between £1 and £5 million, which is a lot. So the requirement for us to generate cash to grow our business as we go got more and more important. Every move was a bigger move. You know, I thought the first £1 million deal we ever did was huge. I signed one off without anyone say so. £1 million now, not a problem. Everything's 10, 20 million now. $1 million was nothing. But it seemed like everything in the early days. So it did change our model, did change the capital investment, and it did change effectively the startup part of our business. So we built a business which was heavily in this area, had a data centre, had recovery, we loved the model, got to about £4 million of turnover, nicely profitable, but we were only in one geography. And if I wind forward to the crash that happened a few years ago, basically what happened was, geographically, the market in London died immediately. And then it took ages to work its way up the country, but basically every single region suffered the most horrific economic circumstances you can ever imagine. And eventually got to here. And we were heavily dependent on the public sector. So we suffered real pain in this geography. If I was only in this geography at that point in time, which was my biggest fear, we would have really suffered. But by then I'd added other geographies, including London. So by the time the pain got to here, my London business had recovered and been doing well, and it hadn't quite got to Scotland. So that geographic bit was really important. that we got away from the reliance on one geography, which was a great strength and a great weakness. And if I look at our business at that point in time, I live in South Shields, we had a head office in Teesside. It was easy for me to run that business at that point in time, because I only had 2 sites to go between, Newcastle or Teesside. As we grew out geographically, I suddenly had a business that's now in Glasgow and Edinburgh and Sheffield and London. It's a different management style, it's a different way of doing it. It's not so easy for me to communicate with people, I have to physically go and see them. I used to get everybody in a room on the first Tuesday of every month. It's not easy for me to do that because it would have to be first Wednesday in Edinburgh, first Thursday in Britain. I'd spend a week, a month briefing staff. So that did change our business, but it changed it for the better. We made 2, probably in 2006, 2007, we made 2 strategic acquisitions. Bought a business in Glasgow and then another one in Edinburgh. And that gave us Edinburgh, Glasgow, Newcastle. It gave me the geographic spread, and we grew from there. So that strategic acquisition, never done an acquisition before outside of our geography, never done a one that was almost the same size as us. I have to say the Campbell Lee one in Glasgow was a great one. IBM dealer, 25-year history, great people, and an MD who was 60 and just wanted to retire, wanted to go and play golf in Florida. So said he would stay with me for a year to help me integrate, then wanted to leave. Best of all acquisitions, not on the market. Nobody had advertised this business. We found it, we liked it, we talked to him, we persuaded him to sell it to us, and off we went. And greatest deal we could ever do. We had a data centre estate then, which was just Newcastle, and I wanted one in each geography, and the Glasgow acquisition already had one. I wanted one in Edinburgh, and we found this enormous data centre, which had been mothballed. Nobody would buy it. You'd go up to the site, you'd think, my God, this is horrendous. It was 32,000 square feet, so it's huge. But it hadn't been well maintained. It needed probably needed £1 million spending on it, and probably 10 in total. And we saw this facility and thought, you know what, no one's going to buy this, but we just think it's a great opportunity. In an up-and-coming area of Edinburgh, right where all the banks are. But I don't think anybody could see past the mess. It was dirty, it was tired, it needed money. We bought it, we invested the money in it. It was a huge amount of money and a huge amount of risk at the time. But immediately upon opening that facility, I put a customer in there that gave me £2 million every year. And it was just perfect, right place, right time. It was just amazing. A blue chip media business with a 10-year contract. Timing was great, and I think it's almost that field of dreams, build it and they'll come. That happened in Edinburgh for us, and that really transformed our business. So the Edinburgh bit was important. More recently, 2 years ago, we bought a similar site in Sheffield. Spent a bit of money developing that, and I'm pretty sure next time I come here I'll be telling you how great that centre's doing and where we've got to then. In terms of growth plans, I've talked about investing in the business, I've talked about strategic acquisitions a little bit, I've talked about new facilities and new geography. There's almost a fundamental here when you're growing a business. You've got to organically grow. You can't just acquire things and make new things. You've got to drive more revenue from your existing business. You've got to show you can grow it without making acquisitions, without spending money. Tons of my competitors don't allow a year to go by without them doing an acquisition or doing something, because they're terrified to let you see what the last 12 months numbers look like, because normally they're going like that. Our business has driven about 15% bottom line growth every single year. And I think that's just a fundamental. That's one of the kind of holy grails. You have to do that. You have to sell more to your existing customers. You have to drive the profitability. You have to drive the business forward without making acquisitions. And then the acquisition becomes the bit on top. And I think when you've got a growing business, people forget that. They sometimes think, oh, well, you know, I've bought a couple of businesses and that isn't that great. And 1 + 1 sometimes equals 1.5. So you've got to get that organic bit growing. That's really important. So investing in the business in new areas, strategic acquisitions, the right ones in the right geography, not just anything, with the right management team who are either staying or going, new facilities with it, and that organic growth, for me, are key. If I was to consider some of the more interesting parts, whenever people have bought businesses, what they tend to do is they tend to buy things that are for sale. And everything's for sale at the right price, it really is. Some people just haven't quite decided they're going to sell something yet. And probably the two greatest things that weren't for sale that I've bought over the last few years We bought the business in Glasgow, Campbell-Lee. The guy wasn't considering selling it, but was wondering about retiring. We went to see him because it looked like us. We talked to him. It wasn't on the market. No one was actively trying to market it. We talked to him. We said, we'd actually quite like to buy this business. He thought about it for a little bit and he came back and said, yeah, that's right. I got a great deal. He got a great deal. It was just the right thing. So buying something that isn't up for sale, often things are up for sale for the wrong reason. There's either dying or there's a fundamental issue. So we've not bought things that are for sale. I moved house 5 years ago. My next door neighbour, 2 doors down, had a bigger house than me, was cutting his grass. I came out, I said, I've sold my house and I'm going to move, but I'm just looking for a new house. He says, yeah, it's quite like to sell my house, but just never got around to it. He said, I'll buy it. I said, yeah, okay. So we shook hands on the grass. That house wasn't up for sale. He just thought about it. It was great for me. I just carried the furniture around the corner. It was fantastic. So not everything you buy is up for sale. And I often steer clear of things that are up for sale, because they're sometimes up for sale for the wrong reasons. Buying other people's dogs, what do I mean by that? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, as is always the case. We bought a data centre in Sheffield off a property investment business that didn't understand it, didn't have any other data centres, thought it was just an office, clearly wasn't. It was a dog. It was losing he was a very, very wealthy man, very wealthy. He was writing a cheque every month for £20,000. And after a little while, no matter how wealthy you are, you just get sick of writing that 20 grand cheque. So he called us up and we went down to see him. We'd been to see it before, and his view on price was just ridiculous. We quite liked it. It was a dog. He didn't want it. It wasn't a dog for me. Fantastic deal. We got the greatest deal ever. It was on a business park, and there was grants available and tax credits and the like. I almost got my money back as soon as I did the deal with the tax credits we got. So buying somebody else's dog can be a really fundamentally a value creating thing if you're clever. We bought a software business when we wanted to get into the workplace recovery and the business continuity bit of a company who had built this software and didn't know what to do with it. I think I paid £5,000. He thought he was selling me the software. I wanted the name, the domain names, everything that went with it. It was perfect for the business I already had. He just didn't know I had that. Once I took that and put that on mine, he rang me up and said, didn't realise you were going to do that. So I didn't want to tell you, because you want more money. So buying other people's dogs is probably things you won't find in a textbook, but you just create a lot of value by doing that. Executing really fast. Most of my competitors are as clever, if not cleverer than me. Most of them have normally got more money than me. Some of them are bigger than me. The way we win is we're more agile, so we just execute faster. So when we opened the recovery centre in Newcastle, we spent over £1 million buying this property, and I sat in my room, with the feet on the table with the rest of my guys around me, having a coffee. I said, guys, I want to open in 4 weeks. And everyone fell off the table. Everyone just put the cups down and went, what? I want to open in 4 weeks. And the guy who was handling it for me said, yeah, okay, we'll open in 4 weeks. And we did. And anybody else who was contemplating getting into that market at that time, who was thinking that could be a good business, we just went quicker. We opened in 4 weeks. I booked all the people who opened it, all the dignitaries. We made the announcements. I wrote the letters that day. We opened in 4 weeks. Nobody could have opened faster. Speed of execution was just key. It really was. There's nothing more heartening for me than just getting on and doing something. Most of my competitors just take too long. Just get on with it. So that executing very fast is key. It really is. 2010 was really interesting. 2010 was a year where we were looking, and I'll talk about funding and structures in a moment, but we were looking at what we do with some of our shareholders in 2010, and a number of financiers had talked to us about our next stage of growth. And I sat at the board and I said, you know what, guys, I've got 5 different deals I'm trying to do right now, and they're all huge. These are all big deals, commercial deals. 5 new customers, 5 blue chip customers. If I was to win, I thought that was interesting, but maybe other people want to talk over me. I had these 5 deals to do, and I said to the board, guys, I've got 5 deals to do, and if you start talking about finance and the like, then you'll take my eye off these 5 deals. And if I got 1 or 2 of these, the world will change. So they said, okay, Neil, you're the boss, you do what you want to do. So we put the funders at bay for a little bit, but I didn't get one or two of those deals. We got all five. Got all five of them, including Sky TV. 5 amazing transformational deals, 2 banks, Sky TV. It step changed the profitability of the business overnight, and it added 50% of the profit that we make, all in one go. And then if I look, almost 2 years ago, I had somebody I knew from a former customer, and it's that thing about when a customer leaves, you let that customer leave on the greatest terms ever. And one of my customers got bought by a really big business who just wanted to put their own IT in and didn't want what we had. Nothing wrong with the service we provided. You just lose customers, sometimes you can't avoid it. And this big financial company gave notice and off they went. And we left on the greatest terms. I went to see them, I shook hands, I said, thank you for the business. I understand why you're leaving. I came out and cried afterwards because it was a big customer. But you leave on the best terms. And I was in a board meeting and the phone rang and it was the tech guy from there. I thought, I need to take this. So I took the call in the middle of the board meeting. He said, Neil, I've gone to Edinburgh Airport and we just need your services. Can you just come? Yeah. And we got a £1 million a year contract as a consequence of that. So the people bit's really important. Always let your customers, if they wish to leave on the best terms, because it's all about people and they certainly come back. Can we talk a little bit about the model? What makes a successful business and what doesn't? And for me, the mantra, having looked at a lot of businesses and invested in a lot and done a lot of stuff, it's always the model. Always the model. If you've got the wrong business model, you're stuffed. Before you even start. Almost, the bigger and more successful you get, the worse it gets. So I always, when I'm looking at a business, I get the overview, what do you do? I go straight to, how do you make money? How are you financed? How does it work? What's the model? Tell me how the model works. Because if the model's wrong, it won't work. It just won't. And almost the bigger you get, the worse it gets. So start with the end in mind, and that's what we did. So I said to every customer, my ethos here is I want long-term contracts. And some of my competitors said, oh no, we'll just do 1 year. I don't want 1 year contracts, I want long-term. I want 3 or 5 year contracts, so I can see the visibility of the business as it comes. And I want the right price. I don't want to take cheap contracts that don't drive good value. So I want long contracts, I want good margins, and I want that margin to grow by inflation every year. So every one of my contracts has got that written in that as the economy gets bigger, the price goes up. Payment terms is a killer. People accept 60 days in arrears and stuff like that, 90 days. I never do. Nearly every one of my customers pays me at least 30 days in advance. More than half of them pay me annually in advance. I think it's just fundamental. You've got to get the payment terms right. My business right now, as we grow, I don't have a working capital requirement. I don't have an overdraft need. As we grow, as my revenues grow, my cash grows because my customers pay me in advance, which is absolutely key. So long-term contracts, the right price, the right payment terms, scalability. So what does that mean for my business? Well, right now, 90% of my business repeats and recurs. So I can at the start of the year, I can touch and feel 90% of my revenues, which is a nice place to be. So when my competitors start on the 1st of January with nothing, wow, that would keep me awake at night. I start seeing 90%. My customers not only have a long-term contract, but they've also paid me in advance for a lot of the services that I do. So I've already had the cash. So almost if a customer goes bust, they've already paid me. So the model is everything. But if you've got the wrong model, you make money at 5 o'clock on a Friday every week. It's tough. You've got to get the right model. People always forget that. They think, oh yeah, I'll do a deal in the next 60 days. It's rubbish. As soon as you start doing that, you pollute your business, you pollute your value. We've always had the right model. It's been key. Funding. As you grow a business, you clearly, in the early days, don't have a business that can provide the fuel itself. That's just not possible. I'd love it to be the case, but in early stage, when you're growing your business, you need to borrow. You need to get injections of capital, and they come from a number of different ways. In the early days, we put our own money in because that was the only way. No bank would lend to me. We didn't have a track record as such, so no angel was prepared to put money in, other than people we knew. So you borrow from family, friends, and the like. That's just what you do. You have to do that personal bit. I hate people who bring me a business, and I say, how much have you put into it yourself? And they say, oh, nothing. I say, wow, I've shut the door on the way out. That's just rubbish. So there's always a bit of personal. Angel's really interesting, and I do a little bit of angel investing myself. But if you can get an angel, they bring you cash, they like your business, but they give you a bit of skills as well as you go forward. And that's probably after the personal and before you get the institutional type stuff. So we had at one point in time, I had 50 angel shareholders in our business, and they ran some of the biggest businesses in this region. They were lawyers, they were accountants. They gave me so much other than cash. It was fantastic. However, as such, an angel can only put so much in before that changes, and you reach a point where that's just not going to work, and they really need to exit. You need to bring the next one in. Venture capital's next. These guys are later stage when you've got a bit of a business. So this was probably when we had the data centres in the northeast and in Scotland, and we're looking for the next stage of growth. I was looking to buy businesses. I had a track record, I had some profitability. The venture capital guys came in and replaced some of the angel shareholders. Didn't replace any of my cash because that was always tied in, but they replaced some of the angels. And at that point, I think 2007, I did a fantastic thing and the most stupid thing I could ever have done. We didn't have any bank debt. I had a mortgage on a property and that was it, but we didn't have any bank debt. And what banks will do is banks will lend you a multiple of your profitability, providing it's good. So take it back to the model. If your revenue generation and your business model's crap, the amount of money you'll get from a bank will be equally as disappointing. Ours was great, so they would lend us about 3 times what we make every year. So if we make £1 million, they'd lend me 3. And as I got more profitable, they would lend me more. And we did that type of deal with a Bank of Scotland, Halifax Bank of Scotland, late 2006. And we thought it was great. We'd never had any bank debt. We used that to make a couple of acquisitions. They were dead supportive. Really good, really helpful. Not quite sure they really understood what they were doing at the time, but they did us a cash flow deal of about £4 million, I think, at the time. And we thought that was great. I did a really, really clever thing. When we had the Campbell Lee business up in Scotland, it had a head office in Falkirk. And for those who don't know, if I go back, I'm going to go. There. Falkirk is right between Edinburgh and Glasgow. Right between. I like the place, but there's nothing there. No business reason to be there. Some of the people lived around there. That was where the Campbell Lee head office was. It had 2 train stations. Outside one of the train stations was our office. The other one was up the hill miles away. I always went to the wrong one, so I always had to walk down the hill. It rained every time I went. So when we did the deal, I thought, I can't wait to close this office. We owned it as part of the deal. I can't wait to close this office. I can't wait to sell it. And I'm going to use that cash to buy something else. And we sold it to the pub next door. It was almost like a doctor's surgery. And we sold it to the pub next door for twice the book value. It was on the books for about £500,000, and we sold it for £1 million. It was the cutest deal we could ever do. I was so pleased. The guy paid over the odds. We got the cash. We were so happy. And I went to the bank at the time, Bank of Scotland, and said, guys, I've done the greatest deal ever. I've taken an asset that we all think is worth £500,000. I found the right strategic buyer, because he's next door and he wants to turn it into a hotel. He's paid me twice what it's worth. I've got the cash. It is the greatest deal. And they said, oh great, could you pay down one of your loans? And I thought, no, that's just, why would I want to do that? That's the daftest thing I could ever do. I don't want to pay down my loans. I'm making the payments all the time. A loan is much cheaper financing than any other type of financing. Why would I want to do that? I've never missed a payment. I'm a great customer, you've already seen that. You can touch and feel my revenues. I get paid in advance, I've got long-term contracts. Why do I want to pay down my loans with you? What I didn't realise was the bank was going bust. Didn't understand it at all. He just said, look, we have to have the money. And basically a bank can do what they want anyway. So, extremely upset, came away. We were trying to buy another business at the time, and it was take the cash from there, do it here. And suddenly I had a scenario where not only was I going to have to pay down one of my loans, but I wasn't sure about my financial backer full stop. And I wasn't sure whether they were going to go bust. So I said to them, look, if that's the case, I'll rebank the whole business and move away from you. And of course the first thing they said was, well, we prefer you not to do that because you're a good customer. And I said, well, you treat me like a dog, so that's not the way it's going to be. At which point they then said, well, nobody will rebank you because the world's going to end. I didn't really realise that it was going to end, but I crossed the road to the Co-op bank, and forget what's happened to it recently. I think there's a story here about me in banks, but as HBOS had its problems, we crossed the road to the Co-op. I got a better deal with the Co-op on cheaper terms. I got more money. They were super ethical and super nice, and I loved the Co-op, and we were with them for 4 years. So right at the height of the banking crisis, and I've had a lot of people in Newcastle tell me that we were the only ones who did a deal like that in that time. So, you know, were we right in the middle of the banking crisis? Yeah, we were. And I never saw it coming with HBOS, but we were fast enough to move away and did it right. Will that happen again? Yeah, of course it will. Not for 20 or 30 years, but of course it will, because these things go in cycles, and everyone's deleveraging at the moment, but it'll come back, of course it will. More recently, we've moved away from the Co-op to HSBC, only because our financing requirements were out with what the Co-op could do. And they just couldn't do that. So we went to HSBC. Sadly, the Co-op's had its problems since then. So I think there is a thing about be careful what you say to me, because you might have significant consequences later on. We've also, in terms of funding, we've also used our own profit. And I think that's important as you get bigger. Not only are you borrowing, not only are you bringing new shareholders in, you're investing your own profit, you're not taking cash out. And I think that's important. When you've got financiers on board, they don't want to see you taking the cash out. They want to see it reinvested in the business. So the more profit you get, the better your business model, the more you can invest that cash in your business as you go forward, the more successful you can get. All the way down that little column from top to bottom, and I've done every single one, every which way, shape or form, you always chase the cheapest, most effective money at that point in time. We did a private equity deal 2 years ago, I'll tell you about in a second. That's probably the most expensive money right now. I'm probably looking at doing a float at some point, because that's probably the cheapest. So it's all about getting the right cash at the right time, the right funding, but you've got to have the fundamentals in your business to get people to invest in that, otherwise it just won't. So I've probably given a story there of £1 million to 20 million. It's been a ride, everything's been great, it's been easy, nothing's gone wrong. I'm a genius, everybody else a fool. And clearly it hasn't been that way. Most people tell you how smart they are, and I'm not smart. Most people don't tell you all the things that went wrong and all the challenges. And then when it happens to you, you think, geez, it must be me. But really it happens to everybody, they just don't tell you. So I thought I'd tell you, thought that'd be more interesting. And I guess at the top, nothing's easy. You know, if you're expecting to build a business, or to be in a business that's being built, nothing's easy. It's blooming hard, it really is. If I look back at 2000, the market's view of our business was comical. Everybody just laughed out loud whenever I said we were a dot-com business. Because the market perception, it's a little bit like banks and politicians now. Market sentiment at that time was just horrific. Everybody just assumed your business was pure vaporware, there was nothing in it, you were making virtual taxis or something ridiculous like that. That was really tough. What was also tough in kind of 2002, 2003 was my biggest supplier was BT, my biggest competitor was BT. So your competitor and your supplier is the same thing. Wow, that was hard. And that probably told me that the original internet business, apart from all the other bits I didn't like, that's probably the bit that I thought, geez, that's just really tough. The biggest recession in living memory. The whole economy dropped 6%, some of my customers died, all the banks go wrong. We organically grew 10% in that year. Bottom line profit grew 10% that year. And I spoke at an event just afterwards, and somebody put their hand up and said, you've just learned to dance in the rain, haven't you? And I said, yeah, that's what you've got to do, because these things happen around you and you can't complain. You've just got to get on. So the recession was a challenge, it really was. The banks I've already told you about, and that challenge with Falkirk, and that challenge just with banks in general. I never thought I'd see a bank go bust. I've seen them all go bust, so very interesting times. You forget the personal stuff. I've got initials there just to remind me. In the last 14 years, I've had 2 staff die, which is not pleasant. And everyone forgets that when you run a business. You think, oh yeah, it's a dream. No, we've had 2 all-staff funerals, 1 senior member of staff, one more junior die. So you do have challenges. For all the deals I've done, and I showed you how we shifted the business from 1 site to 10, done a lot of deals, made acquisitions, opened new sites. For every one we've done, we've probably tried to do 5. I've twice been in the car driving to a lawyer's office to close a deal to be told it's off. That just breaks your heart. You spend months doing it. I was on my way to Manchester. I was on the M62, my least favourite road in the world, in traffic jam, heading across to Manchester early in the morning, and I got a call from the company we were trying to buy, and it was a listed business, and we were going to buy a bit of it. And overnight, somebody had bought majority shareholding in this business. It's a public business, there's nothing I could do about it. And the first thing he said when he bought it was, I'm not selling that bit over here anymore. So I just turned around and came home and burned about £200,000 in legals and nothing he could do. So for every deal we've done, there's deals you've lost, you've just got to get used to that. You can't do every deal. I've walked away from a few, but there's 2 I can think of where I was almost at the altar and I'd spent all the money doing that just to find out that you can't. So quite some challenges there. So what does the future hold for us? Well, 2 years ago we did a private equity deal with a company called ISIS who valued the business at £42 million. From where we've come to, that's a pretty big deal. There's public domain stuff, so everyone knows that. We are in our next stage of growth right now. I hired 2 new directors last year. We're looking at shifting this business from 20 million last year to 100 million in a few years' time, more than 20 million in profit. I'm keeping the HQ in the northeast of England because that's where I live, and I ain't moving from here. I'm expecting nearly every one of my employees a graduate, so that's either great news for you or bad, depending on whether you want to come and work for me. But we do employ graduates. I think the overarching thing in all of this is building the business is great, but you've got to have fun. And if I go back to the beginning, when I left the brewery in Sunderland, I had a job. I had to be at my desk for 9 o'clock, I had to leave by 5, and I had to be there in between. And I've never had that ever since. I've chosen to do what I did because I wanted to, and it is the most liberating experience. However, it's also the most challenging, so you've got to accept that. And that's probably as much as I need to say. I'm not sure whether in fact, I've done pretty well for time. Has anybody got any questions? Judging by the fact that everyone's talked over me all the way through this, I'm sure you've all got questions.
Guys, have we got any questions for you, please? One down here, down at the front, don't listen, please. Can we quiet so we can have a question, please?
What does your brand name mean? And what do you want to show by it?
Right, when I joined in '96, the business had been called Oynx for 2 years, and it wasn't the biggest challenge, the brand at the time. It just wasn't. The market was exploding. Who cares what we were called? 5, 6 years later, when we bought the business, it had been called that for so long it was hard. And again, it wasn't the biggest challenge. Right now, it's just too hard to change. Everyone knows this is Oynx. So most people will tell you the greatest story about we made it because it was this or it was that. That was what it was called, and it's just too hard to change. In terms of what the business is all about, it's all about quality of supply, it's about understanding what the customer needs, it's about reputation, it's about experience, it's about having superior, that's probably the word, superior infrastructure, a superior business. The credibility, the track record is all kind of woven into that. That's how we view brand.
Any other questions?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, personally, I like to be in front of people. So I don't manage. You don't manage people by sending an email, yeah, or ringing them up. You go see them. You go sit with them. You know what they do. You know what the family is. You know where they live. You know what they like. You know what they don't. That personal bit's really important. I've got to it's an awful thing, but I've got to like the people because you spend so much time with them. So the like's a big word for me. So I'm very personable. I am very face to face. I care what happens with the staff. The staff are not bits of infrastructure that deliver profit. The people that we've all had kids at the same time and done all the. So I'm very people focused. So I spend a lot of my time going out with my staff, going out on sales appointments, going out with the tech guys, going to sites. I do Edinburgh one day a week, I do London one day a week. At the moment I'm doing Sheffield one day a week. So I travel quite a bit, only because that's my management style. And I'd hate to think I view people as just assets, because they're just not. So and that just makes it harder. If I was a bit more nasty and a bit more horrible, I'd probably manage people by email and ring them up occasionally and shout down the phone. And my staff would probably say, the quieter they get, the more nervous they get. So, if I'm not there in front of them, they think, geez, what's happening?
Okay, one more question. I'm conscious of time and I know some of you are going to make the other workshops. But two more questions. Just quickly.
I was interested in how you manage the relationship with the press people.
Yeah.
Because it seems that you are more concentrated in PR than advertising or video. And second is a quick question. I was looking at your customers, and there is one or two versions of it. Sometimes you because even
I'd love them to be. I'd love them to be. The more of these things I do, hopefully, the more they loosen the purse strings and decide to spend some money with me. What was the first question?
Can we just sit tight for 2 more minutes, please? Thank you.
Everybody's got a view on profile. Yeah? How do you get profile? And the most expensive way to do it is to take adverts and hope people read it. And when they look at the advert, they already know that you've paid to have that. So it's got no credibility. They know you've paid to do that. There's no credibility, there's no referenceability. It's just an advert, it's just a picture that you've paid a lot of money to have. If you can persuade a journalist to write some nice things about you, not only does the reader think that the newspaper's written that and it's their view and therefore it's reality, whatever you put in there, but the cost of it's virtually nothing other than your time. So it is the best cost, fastest reach marketing tool you can do, unless you're in the consumer space. Because if you're in the consumer space, I go on TV every day. But B2B, I want the credibility, I want the referenceability, and TV won't get that for me. At the 7 after Coronation Street's not going to help me.
Okay, I'm conscious of time. I just want I think
Sorry, we've got one more. Go on.
Well, okay. One more question.
Yeah, you said a whole lot. From everything you said, there's a whole lot of risks you've taken, and you're still taking risks. And in all this, there's a part of decision making. And I just wanted to know, you've grown largely, and how do you make your decisions in this risk? Is it just you, or you just involve every other person from top to bottom in your decision making? How do you do it?
You are. When you're the leader, are you in charge? People want to know which way we're going. Yeah? We're going that way. Everyone's going that way. So we want the leader to be decisive and point that way. So the worst leaders spend ages talking to people about stuff and go round. And Gordon Brown is probably the greatest example. The former Prime Minister. He used to read information all night. And at 11 o'clock, when he'd read and read and read and read, just before he went to bed, he said, "Can I have some more information?" Tony Blair used to read for 5 minutes, read something else for 5, say, "Right, we're going that way." So you've got to be decisive. You've got to be quick to make your decision. And I make my decisions based on what's the downside, what's the upside. There's risks in everything. If you don't want to take any risk, you stay in the house. And then probably a plane will crash on you. So the world's full of risk. You've got to, what's the reward, what's the upside, what's the realistic downside? And you've got to do stuff. You've got to do loads of stuff. It won't kill you.
Probably you set the pace, everyone else follows.
Yeah. Yeah. And you take them with you rather than follow.
Okay, I think we've got it hold there. I just wanted to say thank you very much to Neil, and can you please show your appreciation? questions, you want to put your one-on-one and you're in the